37, great Phil Wayne. Um, so James, yeah, the $500 challenge is something I do. I've done it a while back, doing it again the last couple months. And the idea is I only put $500 of capital into an account and see how much we can grow it. And the idea is it's to ideally helps supposed to teach about risk tolerance. Because in my opinion and in my experience, if you can trade with a small amount of money, like $500, right, and you are still being very mindful of how much of that capital you're putting out there, the risk versus reward that you're setting up. For example, on this new trade for ORCL, we're in for $1.35, which is a little bit on the heavier side compared to the risk that we've done recently in the account. But the profit potential on this 5-point spread is 365. So it's an excellent risk versus reward scenario in that case. And the idea is if I can teach you how to manage your risk in a small amount of money, like $500, it teaches you the right skills and habits to then, when you decide to put more of your savings out there to trade or, your fun money, I know some of you have really large accounts that you're okay with, trading. Some of you guys are trying to be very conservative because this is your savings. I totally get it. But that either way, no matter what you're using out there to trade with capital wise, if you can be mindful of it with $500, it's easy to then scale up and trade it with a larger size while still ideally keeping on to these rules of risk management, risk versus reward, risk tolerance. Because the biggest thing I have found with teaching people how to trade, especially with coaching in the past, is a lot of times by the time that they would come to me for like one-on-one coaching, they had already blown up their account, right? There was nothing that I could do to help them. They had like 20-point wide credit spreads that were completely in the money with 2 days into expiration. It's like there's nothing, I can do about managing this. So I do it with $500 because that way people of my generation and younger who might not have a lot in their savings or they're still paying off student loans and stuff, they're able, right? 500 is a pretty manageable amount to try and get together to then put forth in trading. So that's what the $500 challenge is, James. So I trade that specifically in my Thinkorswim account. And we'll see how it goes. The ORCL trade, certainly we opened earlier today, is looking good. It didn't quite get to target. So we'll see if it can get to target tomorrow and allow us a quick scalp. Looks like it's pulling back a little bit into the close, but still up on the day. And our Google trade, I should have gotten out of earlier this week in hindsight. That one pulled back on me, unfortunately. I thought we'd finally get a move going. I know it was attempting a bullish divergent bar today. It looks like that's disappeared, unfortunately. But it's still hugging that 10. So if we can have Google follow along with some of this bullish sentiment in the market, ideally we'll still be able to get out of that for, at the very least, a scratch, if not maybe still a win. And then SU also pulled back, but that one, I'm not a fan of how it looked earlier, but it's bounced back up into a bullish divergent bar, right? Quite a bit of selling, but it came down, tested the ATR holding. I don't like the Bollinger Bands flaring open, and I do not like momentum starting to cross below the zero line, but we are attempting a true low here. It has a good follow-through rate on bullish divergent bars, and it has a really good follow-through rate on weekly bullish divergent bars. So we'll see if it can't start to bounce now. It's actually getting close to price support again for the close of the day. So that's actually a good sign for us. This trade we have a bit more time on, of course, because it's based more off the weekly setup. But we'll see if it can get up there or not to help us out for the challenge account. And then just looking at a few of the other ones, Uber's still looking really good for us, for those of you in the small lots room here at Simpler. So that looks solid. Once again, if you want to close it out here in case it gets another pullback, you can. Part of me also wouldn't mind another pullback because then we could jump into a long call for a better cost. Coin is looking really good for our bonus butterfly. Netflix. I'm really kicking myself about Netflix. Netflix is just had an alert go off. What was that? Let me take a look. It's usually faster on the phone app, I find, to navigate Thinkorswim sometimes when figuring out the alerts. ARM. Oh, let's take a quick look at ARM. Nice move. Great follow through on this bullish divergent bar. Like I said, I can't jump into every trade, guys. I'm limited on capital, but very nice follow through on that. So if you have the divergent bar indicator, great entry and setup on that one. Also had recent true lows, so that might be a bigger push for a move there. And then Ivan, yeah, so Google, we'll see if it turns back around for us. I'd love to see it bounce up a little bit more to make a bullish divergent bar again on the day, but I don't think that's going to happen before close, unfortunately. Oh, Wayne, I think you were the one that talked about DDD, right? Triple D. This one set off an alert the other day, so I don't know if it's because it hit a target. Maybe it hit a divergent bar target. But I know we were joking about this one, but it's on the right track. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was somebody else. I know somebody mentioned this, and they were like, I'll let you know when it gets to 10. I said, okay. So maybe not. It's right at the 100. This has been my hesitation about jumping in this one, is that daily 100. But if it can start to cross, I think that's what the alert was for, to see if it could start to break. So I might look at that one at the end of the week. From a monthly perspective, it's right back down towards the bottom of this range it's been in. It's had some pretty nice moves in the past, even up to 20, right? If you were to buy shares here or something, might not be a bad play. So I'll still keep an eye on that one. But yeah, if it makes a bearish divergent bar this week, probably we'll still just keep it on the watch list for now. But coin had a nice follow through. I think this one's setting up really well for our fly next week. Still has room on momentum, might start to break above the strike level. So if that happens and it looks like it's not going to get a pullback, then I'll probably look to cut our trade, right? And whatever credit that we close it out for, that's going to be our profit on this. Unless you locked in a small profit like I did, right? Then it's added onto it, which I don't really count 2 cents as a profit, right? So whatever I close this out for will be my profit. But it's acting really well. The only thing we need now for this setup here, as it starts to get closer into expiration. Sorry, my Tasty's acting a little bit slow today, guys. But if you guys remember, we jumped into this one a while ago, decided to profit recycle it, and then jump into a new trade, which we already took off. But for this bonus butterfly, right, if we can get closer to this 400, nice open interest for next week. Next week is a monthly expiration. It's a nice psychological level to be at for the monthly. I think this could really pay us nicely. So if you have multiple contracts, though, and you want to take some off the table, I don't think that's a bad idea. But otherwise, it's pretty close to start going in the money a little bit for us, and nothing's changing about that daily time frame. And then once again, if you want that YOLO trade on Netflix, I wish I had a time machine just to go back 2 days so we could have jumped in for the 1233 target for this week, because like I said, Netflix has a stellar follow-through rate. I was a little hesitant with all the noise about this on Twitter and everything with Elon, right? Because sometimes these companies, like Target, that one hasn't recovered yet. But Netflix holding strong. Great squeeze. We, of course, have the recent true lows before all of that news happened. But divergent bar follow-through rate, 9.5 out of 10. So I really will not be surprised if this gets up to or above 1233.93 by the end of the week. And certainly if you jumped in at the bottom this week, you're pretty happy. Yeah, Ivan, I would too. Especially if they're only like 50 cents or whatever for being that far out of the money. Oh, I would have put the whole account into it. Which is not something I would ever actually do, guys, right? Gotta be mindful of capital risk. For us trading in the market, right, that is the only thing we can control. And OPITS, right, the OPI to OPITS change, great example of that. So there's the bell. If anyone had a pin today, 67.5409 was that level. So 67.55 was probably ideal. If you had a 50 pin with a 5-point spread increment, popped down right at the close. So yeah, actually that would have worked too, probably today, at least depending on your cost basis. Very nicely done. Let's see. I know the 15-minute trade technically wasn't valid today. If you took it, it would have worked. No bonus trade, though. A little bit too much of a move up. High vibrations, you had it. Well done, sir. Very nice. So thank you all so much for joining me. As always, may the trade be with you, my fellow Jedis, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye.